Chapter 7 Control and Coordination. Regulation of life. We have learnt about various life processes like nutrition, respiration, excretion, digestion, etc., which are essential for the survival of every individual. In all living organisms, life processes such as digestion and respiration, growth and development must occur simultaneously one after the other because these activities are directly or indirectly linked with each other. For example, food material taken in through ingestion has to be digested and later oxidized to obtain energy through the process of respiration. This energy is utilized for growth and development of the organism. Thus, there is a need for proper regulation of these life activities for a better survival of the living organisms. Movement is a characteristic feature of all living things. Both plants and animals show movement, but movements in animals are noticeable and fast, whereas in plants, the movement is not spotted readily. Germination is the first stage in the life cycle of a plant seed, which ultimately develops into a seedling. The movement of the seedling is because of its growth. If growth is prevented, the seedling does not show any movement. Some of the movements exhibited by many animals and some plants are not related to growth. Let us look into some examples to understand this. Mimosa plant, commonly known as touch-me-not plant, closes its leaves on touching. Thus, if we consider the examples of mimosa plant and the seedling, we can conclude that the plants exhibit two types of movements. One movement is growth-dependent movement, as shown by the seed growing into a seedling. The other type is growth-independent movement, as shown by the leaves of the mimosa plant. A cow grazing in the field, birds flying in the sky, or your pet dog running on ground are all examples of growth-independent movements. We associate all visible movements with life. The movements may be in response to a change in the environment of the organism. As animals cannot prepare their own food, they move from one place to another in search of food, water, and shelter. They run to escape from their enemies. Some movements are made by the living organisms to benefit from the changes in their environment. Plants tend to show movement in response to sunlight, air, and water. Roots of plant show downward movement of growth towards water. Plants bend towards sunlight for their growth. Herbivores or grass-eating animals such as cows, buffaloes, and deer feed primarily on grass, leaves, and hay. The herbivorous animals are unable to directly break down the cellulose present in the complex plant materials due to the absence of cellulase enzyme in their digestive system. The undigested and partly digested food is called cud. The cud stored in the rumen later returns to the mouth in small amounts. The animal keeps on chewing this cud continuously. This movement helps in breaking up complex food to facilitate better digestion. Movements are also made to protect ourselves in response to any change detected. For instance, when bright light is focused on the eyes, the pupil of the eyes contract. Similarly, on touching a hot object, we quickly withdraw our hands. All the movements made in response to any change in the environment are carefully controlled. The change in the surroundings elicits a suitable movement in response depending on the event that triggers it. Coordination. What is coordination? In any multicellular organism, there are various tissue systems and organ systems. For proper functioning of an organism, there has to be a perfect coordination among different organs and systems and various stimuli from their surroundings. For example, in higher plants, the process of photosynthesis and respiration are linked to each other for the purpose of exchange of gases. In human beings, digestive system is linked to circulatory system for the supply of absorbed food materials to the cells. In digestive system itself, coordination occurs between different digestive glands and organs. It is necessary that all the organs and systems should function together in a systematic and controlled manner to carry out a particular life process. In other words, the various organs should cooperate with one another. Thus, control refers to the systematic regulation of various activities, and coordination means the orderly execution of these activities. This results in proper growth and development of the organism. Coordination in plants. Plants absorb water, in which minerals are dissolved from the soil with the help of their roots. For effective absorption by the root system, there has to be some loss of water from the plant. This process of loss of water from the plants is known as transpiration. It is carried out by the transpiring organs of the plants. Transpiration takes place in the leaves through the stomata. The process of transpiration is followed by an upward movement of water and minerals inside the plant, like ascent of sap from the roots. Ascent of sap is actually the process of translocation of water from the roots to the shoot region. The absorbed minerals are then utilized for various metabolic activities. For these processes, that is, for transpiration, translocation and absorption to take place, there should be availability of enough quantity of water with dissolved minerals in the soil where the plant is growing. Then only all these processes will function smoothly. Thus, a coordination exists between different life processes occurring in plants. Animals have muscles with the help of which they are able to perform different movements. They also have a nervous system for controlling and coordinating the activities of the body. Plants do not possess a nervous system like animals. The muscular system is also absent in plants. Then, how do plants show different movements? Let us learn about it. The movements exhibited by plants are mainly in response to the stimulus. The stimulus can be internal or external in nature. In a sensitive plant like mimosa, the movement of closing of leaflets is a response to the stimulus of touch. When we touch the leaflets close. They open after some time. This movement, which occurs in response to the stimulus of touch, is known as seismonastic movement. There is no growth involved in this movement. The closing of the leaflets is due to the osmotic movement in the cells of the pulvinus, which is a swollen petiole of a leaf base. Germination is the first stage in the life cycle of a plant seed, which ultimately develops into a seedling. The movement of the seedling is because of its growth. If growth is prevented, the seedling does not show any movement. Thus, if we consider the examples of mimosa plant and the seedling, we can conclude that the plants exhibit two types of movements. One movement is growth-dependent movement, as shown by the seed growing into a seedling. The other type is growth-independent movement, as shown by the leaves of the mimosa plant. Movements in plants which are growth-independent. Certain movements of plants, like those shown by the mimosa plant, does not result in their growth. They are termed as growth-independent movements. Hormones, which are the chemical messengers, bring about various movements in plants in response to certain stimuli. When we observe some movements of plants, we can see that change occurs at a place different from the place where the stimulus was received. For example, if we touch the tip of the leaflets of mimosa plant, folding occurs. This movement is not only at the tip, but the entire leaf, including the leaf base. Thus, movement occurs at a place different from the place of touch. Thus, we can conclude that information regarding some form of contact must have been communicated. Plants do not have any specialized tissue or an organ which can conduct the information to different cells. The plants use chemicals as signals to transfer the information from one cell to another. In response to these chemicals, the plant cells change their shape by altering the amount of water in them, which ultimately results in the movement of the parts of the plant. The cells either swell if there is intake of water, or they shrink if they lose water. That is, a cell becomes turgid or flaccid. This results in the movement of the parts of the plant. Movements in plants which are growth dependent. The movement or growth of any part of a plant in response to external stimulus is called tropism or tropic movement. The reaction of a tendril is thus a tropic movement in response to the stimulus of touch. The shoot system of any plant responds to the stimulus of light by growing in the direction of light. Let us discuss about some examples of plants showing growth-dependent movements. You must have seen the climbers clinging and growing on a support. They manage to keep themselves erect so that they can receive sunlight. These climbers have special modified structures called tendrils. The tendrils help the plant in clinging to the support. Tendrils are sensitive to the stimulus of touch. When the tip of a tendril comes in contact with any object, the portion of the tendril which is in contact shows sluggish growth, whereas growth is steady and comparatively faster at the other parts of the tendril. This causes the tendril to coil itself around the object and thus cling to it. The grapevine, pea plants and gourds are the examples of climbers having tendrils. In a grapevine, the bud is modified as a tendril, and in a pea plant, the leaf tip is modified as a tendril. We have studied about the response of the plants to the stimulus of touch, but it is not the only stimulus to which a plant can respond. Let us study about the other types of stimuli that can be perceived by the plants which ultimately result in their growth. If we keep a potted plant near the window in a room, the stem of the plant bends slightly towards the window. That is, it responds to the sunlight entering through the window. Even the leaves of the plant turn towards the sun. This movement shown by the plant is called phototropic movement. Plants need sunlight, and so the shoots respond to sunlight by growing towards it. When light falls on a part of growing plant, a hormone called auxin is synthesized. The hormone is synthesized at the shoot tip that helps the cells to grow longer. As the light is falling on one side of the plant, the hormone slowly diffuses towards the shady part of the shoot and stimulates the cells to grow longer. Hence, the plant appears to bend towards light. Let us perform an activity to understand about the phototropic movement in plants. Take a conical flask and fill it with water. Place a wire mesh on the flask so that it covers the neck of the flask. On the wire mesh, place 3 freshly germinated bean seeds. Take a cardboard box which is open from one side. Keep the flask inside the box and place it near a window in such a manner that the open side of the box faces light coming from the window. Observe the setup after 2 to 3 days. What do you observe? You can observe that the shoots bend towards light and roots away from light. Now turn the flask in opposite direction so that the shoots are away from light and the roots towards light. Leave it undisturbed for 2 to 3 days. Do you observe any change? You can see that parts of the shoot and root have changed its direction. The shoot that was placed away from the light has shifted towards light, whereas the root has moved away from the direction of light. From this activity, we can conclude that the shoot of the plant exhibits positive phototropism, whereas the root exhibits negative phototropism. If we observe the root system of the plant, it responds to the stimulus of gravity as well as water. The movements occurring in response to the stimulus of gravity are known as gravitropic movements, while those occurring in response to the stimulus of water are known as hydrotropic movements. The roots of plants always tend to move towards water. As they grow downwards, they can even change their direction and grow sideways in search of water. The plant shows yet another type of movement in response to certain chemicals. This movement shown by the parts of the plant in response to certain chemicals is known as chemotropism. This type of movement is shown by the pollen tube. Growth of the pollen tube takes place in response to chemicals secreted by the cells of embryo sac. The pollen grains germinate on the surface of stigma and the pollen tube grows towards the ovule situated in the carpel. Later, the pollen grains fertilize the ovum situated in the ovule to form the zygote. Plant hormones. We have studied that auxins are responsible for growth in the tip region of the shoots. But it is not the only hormone present in plants. Gibberellins, cytokinins, abscisic acid are the other hormones present in the plant body. Gibberellins help in the growth of the stem, while cytokinins promote cell division. Cytokinins are found in greater concentrations in the areas where rapid cell division takes place. It is thus found in fruits and seeds. Auxins, gibberellins, and cytokinins help in promoting growth of plants, but all plant hormones are not growth promoters. Abscisic acid is a plant hormone which acts as a growth inhibitor. Its activity slows down or inhibits growth of plants. Its effect includes the wilting of leaves, falling of fruits, etc. In plants, different hormones are involved in the coordination of growth and development, as well as in response to environmental changes.